Good evening, and welcome to our special coverage. Tonight, a major development out of Minnesota is drawing national attention and reigniting debates over immigration enforcement, protest rights, and federal authority. Federal prosecutors have announced charges against 15 individuals accused of interfering with immigration and customs enforcement operations during a series of demonstrations in Minnesota. The indictments, unveiled by the Department of Justice, have sparked immediate backlash from activists and supporters, leading to large gatherings outside a federal courthouse where several defendants appeared before a judge. As emotions ran high, confrontations broke out between demonstrators and federal law enforcement personnel. Authorities deployed crowd control measures as tensions escalated, while organizers accused the government of targeting political activists. Tonight we'll break down what happened, what federal officials are alleging, what protesters are saying, and why this case could have implications far beyond Minnesota. I'm your host, and this is our special report. The controversy began when federal authorities announced criminal charges against 15 individuals allegedly connected to coordinated efforts aimed at disrupting immigration enforcement operations. According to prosecutors, the defendants participated in organized actions designed to interfere with ICE activities. Officials claim these actions included monitoring federal agents, communicating their locations, organizing rapid response demonstrations, and physically obstructing enforcement operations. Federal authorities say the alleged conduct went beyond peaceful protest and crossed into criminal interference with government operations. During a press conference, prosecutors emphasized that Americans have a constitutional right to protest government policies, including immigration enforcement. However, they argued that intentionally obstructing federal officers performing their duties is not protected under the law. Officials described the investigation as extensive and said it involved months of evidence gathering, including videos, communications records, witness statements, and law enforcement reports. The defendants now face a range of federal charges. Prosecutors contend that these charges reflect specific actions allegedly taken during demonstrations and enforcement operations. Authorities stressed that the indictments are focused on conduct rather than ideology. Federal officials repeatedly stated that the government is not prosecuting individuals because of their political beliefs, but because of what prosecutors characterize as unlawful actions. That distinction has become central to the debate now unfolding nationwide. Supporters push back. Supporters of the defendants strongly reject the allegations. Almost immediately after news of the indictments became public, activists organized demonstrations in solidarity with those charged. Supporters argue that community members were exercising their First Amendment rights and attempting to protect vulnerable immigrants from what they view as aggressive enforcement tactics. Many activists say they believe the charges are politically motivated. They argue that federal authorities are attempting to create a chilling effect that discourages future demonstrations and community organizing. Civil liberties advocates have also expressed concern. Some legal observers say the case could become an important test of where courts draw the line between protected protest activity and unlawful obstruction. Supporters of the defendants insist that warning communities about immigration enforcement activities, documenting government actions, and organizing demonstrations are all forms of protected expression. Federal prosecutors disagree, maintaining that certain alleged actions moved beyond speech and entered the realm of criminal conduct. The ultimate outcome will likely depend on evidence presented in court and judicial interpretations of the law. Protests grow outside Courthouse. As defendants made court appearances, crowds gathered outside the federal courthouse. Witnesses described a tense atmosphere. Demonstrators carried signs, chanted slogans, and demanded that charges be dropped. Many expressed anger toward federal immigration policies and frustration with what they viewed as government overreach. Law enforcement personnel established a security perimeter around the courthouse. Officials said the measures were necessary to maintain safety and ensure court proceedings could continue without disruption. Throughout the day, crowds reportedly grew larger. Observers noted heightened emotions as news spread across social media platforms. Videos circulating online showed demonstrators confronting law enforcement officers and engaging in heated exchanges. Authorities monitored the situation closely as concerns increased about potential escalation. For several hours, demonstrations remained largely focused on speeches, chants, and organized protest activity. However, tensions eventually intensified. Confrontations with federal officers. As the situation developed, confrontations began occurring near security barriers established around the courthouse. officials reported that some demonstrators attempted to push through restricted areas. Law enforcement officers responded by ordering individuals to move back from protected zones. Witness accounts varied regarding exactly how events unfolded. Some protesters claimed officers acted aggressively. Federal authorities argued that crowd control measures became necessary after demonstrators ignored repeated instructions. Posted online captured chaotic scenes involving shouting, pushing, and confusion. At certain points, law enforcement deployed crowd control devices in an effort to disperse groups that officials said posed safety concerns. Federal authorities defended those actions as appropriate responses to escalating tensions. Meanwhile, activists accused law enforcement of using excessive force. The differing accounts underscore the challenge of establishing a complete picture in rapidly evolving protest situations. Investigations into the incident may provide additional clarity in the coming days. National political reaction. The developments quickly attracted attention from political leaders across the country. Supporters of stricter immigration enforcement praised the Justice Department's actions. They argued that federal agencies must be able to carry out lawful duties without interference. Many conservatives described the indictments as evidence that authorities are taking a tougher approach toward individuals accused of obstructing government operations. Some lawmakers stated that failure to enforce such laws would undermine public confidence in federal institutions. On the other side of the debate, critics argued that the prosecutions raised concerns about civil liberties. Several progressive organizations warned that aggressive legal action against activists could discourage lawful protest activity. Advocates stressed the importance of protecting constitutional rights, even during politically contentious disputes. As reactions poured in, social media platforms became battlegrounds for competing narratives. Supporters of the indictments portrayed the defendants as individuals who knowingly interfered with law enforcement. Critics framed the accused as activists being targeted for challenging government policies. The divide reflects broader national disagreements over immigration, protest movements, and federal authority. The legal questions ahead. Legal experts say the case could hinge on several important questions. One key issue involves determining whether the alleged conduct constituted protected expression or unlawful obstruction. Courts have long recognized broad protections for speech and protest activity. At the same time, those protections are not unlimited. Judges often examine whether actions directly interfere with government operations or create safety risks. Prosecutors are expected to argue that defendants crossed legal boundaries through coordinated efforts designed to hinder federal officers. Defense attorneys are likely to contend that clients were engaged in legitimate advocacy and community organizing. The court's analysis could have implications for future protest movements across the United States. Observers note that similar legal disputes have emerged in various contexts, including environmental activism, labor demonstrations, and civil rights protests. Because of those broader implications, many legal scholars will be closely watching the proceedings. Immigration remains at center of debate. Beyond the courtroom drama, the controversy highlights ongoing divisions regarding immigration enforcement. Supporters of tougher enforcement argue that federal agencies must have the ability to carry out immigration laws enacted by Congress. They contend that organized interference threatens public order and undermines lawful government functions. Critics, however, argue that certain enforcement strategies create fear within immigrant communities. Many activists believe local residents have a responsibility to monitor government actions and provide support to vulnerable populations. These competing perspectives have fueled years of political conflict. The Minnesota case now places those disagreements under a national spotlight once again. Regardless of where individuals stand politically, the legal battle is likely to become a major point of discussion in debates about immigration policy. What happens next? The defendants are expected to proceed through the federal court system in the coming months. Initial appearances and procedural hearings will be followed by additional legal proceedings. Prosecutors will continue presenting evidence supporting the charges. Defense attorneys will challenge those allegations and seek dismissal of claims they believe lack merit. Depending on the outcome of pretrial motions, the case could eventually move to trial. If convictions occur, penalties would depend on the specific charges and judicial sentencing decisions. If defendants prevail, supporters may point to the outcome as evidence that authorities overreached. Either way, the proceedings are expected to attract significant public attention. Conclusion: tonight's developments in Minnesota represent more than a local legal dispute. They touch on questions of constitutional rights, immigration policy, public protest, law enforcement authority, and political activism. Federal prosecutors maintain that the case concerns criminal interference with government operations. Supporters of the defendants insist it is an attack on dissent and political organizing. As investigations continue and court proceedings move forward, Americans across the political spectrum will be watching closely. The legal process will ultimately determine whether the allegations withstand scrutiny, and whether prosecutors can prove their case in court. For now, tensions remain high, demonstrations continue, and the debate surrounding these indictments shows no sign of slowing down. This is a developing story, and we'll continue to follow every major development as new information becomes available. Stay with us for continuing coverage.